I'll take the official questions. There wasn't an explanation for the tech that she got. I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing, right? When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game. It's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their team.
Something strange is happening at ESPN headquarters right now. Behind closed doors, Disney executives are holding emergency meetings about the WNBA, and the reason might shock you. Multiple sources are whispering about a single player whose treatment has sparked a corporate crisis that could reshape women's basketball forever. Why would the world's biggest sports network suddenly question their multi-million-dollar investment? What did they discover that has them reconsidering everything? The answer involves Caitlin Clark, but not in the way you might think. This isn't about her performance on the court. It's about what's happening off the court that has billion-dollar executives losing sleep. What exactly are they seeing that we're not? Why are insiders saying ESPN feels blindsided by the league they just invested in? And here's the real question nobody's asking. What happens when the company that controls sports media decides they've had enough? The truth is more complicated than anyone's reporting, and what happens next could determine whether the WNBA survives the next 5 years. Let me show you what's really going on. This isn't just drama anymore, this is about business. And when billion-dollar corporations start losing patience, people lose their jobs, leagues lose their funding, and players? They lose their paychecks. Let's break down exactly what's happening behind closed doors, why ESPN is done playing nice, and what this means for the future of the WNBA. Let's rewind for a second and talk about why ESPN even cares about the WNBA in the first place. Because let's be honest, before Caitlin Clark entered the league, WNBA ratings were not great. The numbers don't lie. Viewership was struggling. Games were being broadcast on obscure channels. The casual sports fan, they weren't tuning in. Then Caitlin Clark got drafted, and everything changed. When Caitlin Clark plays, games are pulling in millions of viewers. Her debut games, record-breaking numbers. Games featuring the Indiana Fever suddenly became must-watch television. Fans who never cared about the WNBA before were suddenly setting reminders, buying jerseys, and filling arenas. Reports suggest that ESPN executives noticed this immediately. They saw the ratings spike. They saw the social media engagement explode. They saw merchandise flying off the shelves, and they thought, this is what we paid for. But here's where it gets interesting. When Caitlin Clark doesn't play, or when she's not featured, the ratings drop. Hard. We're talking about a 60 to 70% decline in viewership when she's not on the court. Games without Caitlin are back to the pre-2024 numbers that nobody was watching. Imagine being an ESPN executive. You just invested millions into broadcasting rights for a league that only gets views because of one player. And now you're watching that league treat her like she's disposable. You're watching other players take cheap shots at her. You're watching referees let flagrant fouls slide. You're watching the commissioner stay silent when Caitlin is getting targeted game after game. Would you be happy with that investment? Insiders are saying that ESPN is not happy. Not at all. Because they didn't pay for a struggling league with inconsistent ratings. They paid for Caitlin Clark. And if the WNBA can't protect her, or worse, if they lose her, then what exactly did ESPN pay for? Now let's talk about what's actually happening on the court. Because this isn't just about business. This is about a player being targeted, disrespected, and physically endangered while the league does nothing. Fans have been documenting every single incident, the hard fouls, the elbows to the face, the trash talk that crosses the line. And what does the WNBA do? Nothing. The commissioner releases generic statements about maintaining the integrity of the game, but never addresses the obvious problem. Caitlin Clark is being treated differently. Reports suggest that ESPN executives have been watching these incidents very closely. They've seen the viral clips of Caitlyn getting knocked to the ground with no foul called. They've seen the post-game interviews where she has to play it cool while everyone knows she just got targeted. They've seen the welcome to the league narratives being pushed by analysts who should be calling out dangerous play. And here's the thing that ESPN executives understand that the WNBA doesn't seem to. Caitlyn Clark is not just a player. She's the product. She's the reason casuals are tuning in. She's the reason sponsors are calling. She's the reason the WNBA is even relevant in mainstream sports conversation right now. But imagine a scenario where Caitlyn gets seriously injured because of a dirty play that wasn't called. Imagine if she misses half a season. Imagine if she gets so frustrated with the treatment that she starts considering other options. Insiders are saying that ESPN is imagining these scenarios, and they're terrified because if Caitlyn Clark goes down or worse, if she leaves, what happens to those ratings? What happens to that investment? The answer is simple: it tanks. Sources close to the situation suggest that ESPN has already started running projections. What would WNBA viewership look like without Caitlyn Clark? And the numbers are brutal. We're talking about going back to pre-2024 levels, maybe even worse because now the league has been exposed. Casual fans gave the WNBA a chance because of Caitlyn. If she's gone, why would they come back? This is where the conflict gets real. ESPN executives are reportedly asking the question that the WNBA commissioner should have been asking from day one. Why are we allowing the only asset that matters to be destroyed? And they're not getting good answers. Reports suggest that there have been conversations between ESPN and the WNBA, not friendly conversations, not partnership discussions. Tense conversations, the kind where lawyers are in the room, the kind where phrases like breach of contract and failure to protect the investment are being thrown around. Because here's what a lot of people don't understand. ESPN's contract with the WNBA isn't just about broadcasting games. It's about broadcasting valuable games. Games people want to watch. Games that justify the advertising rates ESPN is charging. If those games stop being valuable, if the star player is sidelined, injured, or driven out of the league, then ESPN has an argument that the WNBA isn't holding up their end of the deal. Fans are speculating that this is exactly where things are headed. ESPN didn't pay all that money to broadcast a league in self-destruct mode. They paid for growth, for ratings, for Caitlyn Clark. And if they're not getting what they paid for, they can walk away. So what happens if ESPN decides they've had enough? What's the nuclear option? They terminate the contract. Now, obviously, this isn't simple. There are lawyers involved, there are negotiations, there are clauses and provisions, and all the legal stuff that makes these deals complicated. But here's the reality. When a company like Disney, one of the most powerful media corporations on the planet, wants out of a deal, they find a way. And reports suggest they're exploring their options right now. Imagine the WNBA waking up tomorrow and seeing a headline, ESPN to exit WNBA broadcasting deal amid concerns over league management. What happens next? First, the money stops. The WNBA's current TV deal is reportedly worth around $200 million over multiple years. That money funds everything: player salaries, travel, facilities, marketing. Without that check from ESPN, the league is in serious financial trouble. Second, other sponsors start to panic. If ESPN is pulling out, what does that say about the league's future? Suddenly, other companies start reconsidering their investments. Merchandise deals slow down. Ticket sales drop because fans think the league is collapsing. Third, the players suffer, because when the money dries up, salaries get cut. Benefits disappear. The dream of a sustainable professional women's basketball league? It goes back to being a dream instead of reality. And here's the most brutal part. It's all preventable. The WNBA could have protected Caitlyn Clark. They could have addressed the targeting. They could have made it clear that dangerous play wouldn't be tolerated. They could have valued the player who saved their league. But they didn't. Insiders are saying that ESPN executives feel betrayed. They made a massive investment in good faith, believing the WNBA would handle their business professionally. Instead, they're watching a league implode from the inside while the commissioner acts like everything is fine. Sources suggest that ESPN has already started preparing contingency plans. What would their sports programming look like without the WNBA? Could they fill those time slots with college basketball, international leagues, other women's sports? The answer is yes. They absolutely could. And the WNBA? They can't just find another ESPN. There aren't multiple billion-dollar networks lining up to broadcast women's basketball. ESPN was the lifeline. If they walk away, the league might not survive. Let's talk about what the future looks like if this plays out the way insiders are suggesting. Scenario 1, ESPN stays but demands changes. In this scenario, ESPN uses the threat of leaving to force the WNBA's hand. They demand that the commissioner address player safety. They demand that Caitlin Clark be protected. They demand changes to how games are officiated and how discipline is handled. The WNBA, realizing they can't survive without ESPN, complies. Rules get enforced. Dirty players get suspended. The league makes it clear that targeting stars won't be tolerated. This is the best-case scenario, but it requires the WNBA to admit they messed up. And based on how the commissioner has handled things so far, that seems unlikely. Scenario 2, ESPN reduces their investment. Maybe ESPN doesn't completely walk away, but they renegotiate. They cut the amount they're paying. They broadcast fewer games. They put games on less prominent channels. The WNBA survives, but in a diminished state. Player salaries go down. The growth momentum stops. The league becomes what it was before Caitlin Clark arrived, a niche sport that struggles for attention. Scenario 3, ESPN leaves and the WNBA collapses. This is the nightmare scenario, but fans are speculating it's not impossible. ESPN pulls out. No other major network steps in with a comparable deal. Sponsors flee. Teams start folding. The league either contracts severely or shuts down entirely. And the saddest part? It was all avoidable. All the WNBA had to do was protect their most valuable asset, but they chose politics and egos over business, and now everyone pays the price. Here's the bottom line. ESPN is a business. Disney is a corporation. They didn't invest in the WNBA out of charity or social responsibility. They invested because they saw an opportunity to make money, and that opportunity has a name, Caitlin Clark. If the WNBA can't protect her, can't promote her, and can't build around her, then ESPN has zero reason to stay. The numbers don't lie. The ratings don't lie. Without Caitlin, there is no investment. Reports suggest the clock is ticking. ESPN executives are watching. The commissioner needs to wake up and realize that virtue signaling and press releases aren't going to save the league. Only one thing will: protecting the golden goose. Because if Caitlin Clark walks away or gets forced out, the WNBA won't just lose a player. They'll lose everything. The checks will stop clearing, the lights will turn off, and the dream of a thriving women's basketball league will be over. The choice is simple: protect Caitlin Clark or watch the league collapse. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay updated on everything happening with Caitlin and the WNBA, smash that subscribe button because this story is far from over.